Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, do you need help creating a more purposeful way of life? Through one-to-one coaching, I can help you clarify your why and create a plan that aligns your values with your work. Book a free 30-minute discovery call with me today. The booking link is in the show notes. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Rachael Edmondson-Clarke. Hello, Rachael. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Amy. I'm super excited to be on the show. I'm a huge fan of yours and of the show. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, I am excited for your excitement. This is going to be great. So, what is it you're focusing on right now, Rachael?
Mm. Oh, well, before we came on, I was just saying to you how I feel that this is so aptly timed. I have been focusing on this year what it really means for me to report for duty, and not only what that means, but how I do that as well. I think it's fair to say that the work that I do, I feel called to do. I love it. I describe it as my soul's contract. And yeah, I've really been thinking about what does that mean right now, particularly when I think about the context of the world that we're living in. I think many of us and our spidey senses kind of do get that sense that there are quite a lot of shifts that are going on in the wider world, environmental, geopolitical, technological advances. There's a lot happening all at once, and that's even without the context of what's going on within our own lives, our own organizations, our own families. And that can feel like quite a lot. So how do we make sure that we can show up as the leaders that our world needs right now, and do that in a way that allows us to keep our hearts open and our heads high, even when it feels hard.
So, this reporting to duty with your soul's contract, who are you reporting to?
Mm. So I'm not religious, but I do believe in energy and things that are greater than us. Several years ago, one of my coaches encouraged me to write out what that soul's contract might be. And in that soul's contract, I I used the word source was how I described it. Yeah.
Yeah. And this source that you are connecting to and feeling that you have a contract and you're reporting for duty, you mentioned what that means and how you do it. There's another element, the why.
Mm.
Would you like to expand on the what, the how, and the why for us?
Yeah. So I guess the why for me really is that soul's contract. It's the living the meaningful life, and it is about showing up being the very best that I can be. I remember in my early 20s, I was introduced wonderfully to Stephen Covey. And if anyone listening's done that exercise where gets you essentially to attend your own funeral and to think about your legacy and what you want the people who are at your funeral to be remembering and saying about you. And I think I get to that sort of, or even before that, the rocking chair exercise when we're kind of at ideally at that grand old age. And thinking back, I just don't want to have any regrets. And so for me, that why is living that life of meaning and being guided by my spirit, my soul, and being true to that.
And you said about showing up, being the very best that you can be. How are you measuring that?
Mm. Really, really good question. I think it comes in energy, in presence, in how well connected I am. And I mean that in terms of connection with myself as well as with others. Connection with myself is something that in the past I have ignored or not been so good at. And that's been a huge learning for me in my life. So how do I measure it? Can we measure it? I think it is a feeling, it is a sense, it is I think it is probably experiencing more often my values of love, of peace, of joy, of connection, of vitality. And I think when I'm experiencing those things, of the connection, when I'm experiencing those things, then I know I'm on track, so to speak.
So it's a knowing, it's a feeling,
Yeah,
it's a combination.
yes. And in alignment with those experiences that matter most to me, I suppose. Mm.
So this combination of sense, you mentioned earlier, spidey sense, you've got this source, you've got the combination of your connection with this guiding spirit and soul, with your heart open and your head high. What is it that you want to achieve? And what does that mean for you?
So I think perhaps sharing that soul's contract may be helpful here. And that is to be ever evolving, true to my spirit, to enjoy the journey of life, remembering that everything has its purpose. And I am one with all that is. We are all connected. And in doing that, Source works through me. Amy, I don't know how. And I know you've experienced this yourself as well. But it can come through us in a way that can create infinite miracles, not only for ourselves but also for others. And it's something that I remember again and again and again.
And you mentioned just then about remembering everything has a purpose. And also in those final words, remembering again and again. Is it a case that you have forgotten in the past?
Oh, oh yes. Um, I mean, I didn't just get here. None of us do, right? I I remember coming out of university and distinctly wanting to have a marketing career. And for the best part of a decade, I climbed that corporate ladder and eventually achieved everything that I thought I wanted. I had the team, the role, the influence in the organization, the glass fronted office, the company car, all of that stuff. And then one day I was in my office preparing to go into the boardroom. And instead of walking out that door, I found myself collapsed on the floor, staring up at the ceiling tiles. I couldn't think and I couldn't breathe in that moment. And it was incredibly scary. And I later realized that I'd had a panic attack and it had been not even months, it'd been longer, it'd been years of disrespecting my body, neglecting the most important relationship in my life. And I was really feeling pretty bad, but also incredibly responsible for my team, my role, and the organization. And my only answer to it was just to keep working harder, to keep pressing on until eventually my body just went, time out. That's it. We've had enough, Rachel. And so for the longest time, I hadn't remembered and I hadn't been connected to myself and what was going on. And so the signals that I just kept ignoring.
And in retrospect, we see them. We can look and acknowledge them. And what the mind suppresses, the body expresses. And for you, that was an extreme version here. You were a head on a stick, just going through the motions. And you shared that you were climbing this ladder and achieving the things that you thought you'd wanted. What had been the influence of what you thought you'd wanted?
I thought that I had wanted that influence, that status, quite ego driven, I think, if I look back at that now. And what I realized coming out of that time and that period was actually the thing that felt most deeply fulfilling for me was the contribution and the making a difference to others. So, where I was coaching and supporting members of my team, that's what really that's what really felt like meaningful work for me. And this point that I collapsed is now, what, 13 years ago now. But it was that moment that, and the breakthrough didn't come straight away. In fact, it was probably a series of things that happened over a number of years following that moment on the floor. But I essentially I had to break down before I could break through. And that was the moment for me that I think I stopped performing or trying to be what I thought the world wanted me to be. And I really started to look within and ask myself, who do I most want to become?
And having done the legacy exercise of the funeral and the rocking chair and the desire for no regrets, you've future paced that who you want to become. Where are you right now on that journey of that becoming?
Ever learning, ever evolving. I think I think I'm not doing too bad. I'm challenged all the time, like we all are. I'm a mum of two still relatively young boys, and there's all that natural challenge of life that comes along with the territory. I see me enjoying my work and living out my soul's contract until the day I die. So it's for me, this isn't something that is ever going to stop evolving. And do you know, where am I on that journey? Does it even matter? Does that context even matter? Because is it an end result or is it a living into being? Because I almost think that question suggests I'm here and there's a there, but all we really have is now. And how am I living into that moment to moment in the best expression that I can each and every moment, each and every day?
And there's an irony that this career that you had in marketing of the selling to people of what it is that they need to have or be or do in terms of this is what we're going to be, almost prompting people as being what it is that they need, what it is they desire. And yet, here is a person at the heart of that who didn't know what that was for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a straightforward journey. I think I said, it was. I often describe that moment as life slapping me around the face with a wet fish. Like, wake up, woman, wake up! You can't do this anymore. And I don't know. I can't remember exactly when, but in the weeks and months that followed, there was one particular instance when I was getting ready for work and I was in the shower. What is it about water? Something about running water. It's just so good. And I can only describe it like a whisper on my heart that I had been ignoring for a really, really long time. And that moment in the shower, I turned to that whisper and I actually engaged with it for the first time. And it was like I turned to it and just said, "What are you saying? What are you trying to tell me?" And all that came back that I could articulate now is that I was made for more and that I was meant to go and do this work as a coach, as a trainer. And I had no idea how to do it. Here I was in a really good corporate job with the salary, the car, the healthcare, the pension. I was like, but what I did do was that moment that my foot hit the bath mat as I came out and stepped out of the shower that morning, I'd made a decision that I was no longer looking for a job or even a career, but that this was going to be now, from now on, my life's work and my life's mission. And I made that decision then to find and to explore with excitement and possibility and to really follow my heart into what that was. And that's what I continue to do.
You asked a question about the water, and it is a thing. So it is an absolute thing. I talk about it often, this alpha wave activation when you're taking a shower or watching raindrops trickle down a window pane or even the flames of a fire. That moment of relaxation and quietness. It's divergent thinking. It's giving you that ability to have a calm mind, which is not actively processing information. And it's allowing you to be creative, to learn, to explore, to focus. And you've got a reduced amount of stress in yourself. So you can channel potential and allow your mind to wander freely. We often don't give ourselves this time just to think and be. And I mean, I joke about it, like, don't use up all the hot water being in this space because it is such an incredible space that you can generate ideas and possibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Life's work and mission. It sounds heavy when you say the words, but for you, what does it mean?
Joyful presence and and meaning and love and connection, and so not heavy at all. In fact, the opposite. If I wasn't doing this, the opposite would be true. This is It's life-giving for me. My work, and God, I'm lucky every single day. I get to live this life. And, God, I woke up today and I get to experience this. And there are so many days when I just think, oh my goodness, the conversations I've had, the people that I've met, the work that I get to do. And it lights me up. It lights me up.
And you said you had to break down before you could break through. And there was this moment where you stopped performing and trying to be. And as you just shared there, your life's work, this life giving channeling that you have going on is so aligned with the values that you shared earlier, because you used many of the same words again, just in that description. This alignment, this focus, it's showing up in your work, but it's also showing up in your life. What about relationships? How is it showing up for you as a parent?
Oh, this morning's probably a prime example, and even last night. So, my eldest is really struggling sleeping at the moment. And while I had a hugely busy stacked day yesterday, and by the time I was brushing my teeth to get into bed, my husband had already switched the lights off and, kind of turned in. And as I'm brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I noticed this little movement. And I kind of poke my head out the door and I see that our eldest has climbed into bed with my husband and he's having it, he's having a cuddle. And it was really easy for me in that moment, having had such a busy day, to kind of go, oh gosh, my husband's asleep. He's got in. He needs to be asleep. It's 10 o'clock. like, I'm gonna have to try and pick him up, carry him into his bed, settle him down. He's probably gonna call me back when I get into bed. I just want to go to sleep. I just this is my little bit of time now at the end of the day when I can just read my book. And I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't switch the light on or have, squidged in our double bed, the three of us. Very, very easy for me to do that. And honestly, that's where I went initially. And then I remembered, what do I want him to remember about his mum, about his dad? How do I want him to feel? And so when I'd brushed my teeth and put my pajamas on, I climbed into bed next to him and I held him tight and I breathed deep and I gave him that love. And that's where he stayed.
And again, that word remembered, where you're catching yourself, where you go for a moment, you assign a meaning to an occasion, an event that's happened, but then you remember that you can choose to assign a different meaning. And that then shapes the subsequent action. And you could have gone with frustration and anger or whatever it was that you felt the first time, but then you remembered you get to choose.
And it shows up and it tests us every single day. Because this morning he woke up, we all did, not feeling so good, having not had as good a night's sleep as we perhaps all could have done. And I got to choose again this morning when he starts saying to me he can't breathe, or the smallest thing helping him to get dressed is, tipping him over the edge. I get the opportunity to choose again in that moment and then to support him tonight with some improved sleep hygiene. I mean, who knows what will happen? But yeah, we do. We get that opportunity moment to moment every single day to choose how we show up. And that's one I am constantly remembering.
And that opportunity to choose how you show up, that moment to moment, to living in the present, to knowing and feeling this sense of lucky every day to wake up, to live out a day, to have this ability to report for duty and have this soul's contract that you're able to show up as the leader that you believe the world needs right now. All of this coming together and it doesn't feel heavy. It feels light and it's aligned. Is there anything that's missing for you at all, Rachel, right now?
No, I think that I think many of us can wrestle with, and I think it's a healthy tension of being grateful for where we are right now, but also wanting more, or having that vision or that goal that we're moving towards, and recognizing that we're not there yet. And so I think there is a healthy tension there, and I spend time in the gratitude for all that I have right now, as well as sometimes wrestling with that tension of, yeah, the world and things are not as I would love them to be, as my vision would be. And so I don't know that that's anything that's missing. I think that that's life. And I go back to my soul's contract, which talks about enjoying the journey along the way, and that everything has its purpose. And so those shades of light and dark, and the contrast and the difference, the sweet with the sour, is actually what is this, I think, opportunity to have a beautiful experience of life.
And there's this real sense of calm, this energy that you've brought to today's conversation of nothing is going to derail you. And is that true?
So there are times when, if I'm depleted of simple stuff, sleep, if I've worked and not had lunch, if I've not been out and had daylight or nature or movement, if I haven't spent time with my friends and people that I just love and care about, my family, or even just quality time with myself, if I'm depleted in those things, then of course, like all of us, something or someone might come along, and my bandwidth to be able to deal with that is likely to challenge me pretty hard. I'd like to think that I'm pretty aware of those habits, of those rituals that I can seek refuge in, and that I honor those to enable me to more sustainably show up as my best. But I'm also human, and life isn't perfect. And so there are times when that is challenged. Of course it is. And if I'm honest, the people that will feel that the most will be those that are closest to me.
And what you've just described there, those core needs, we often focus on alignment with values, and the core needs are forgotten. And yet they are the foundation for what is needed for us to show up as okay before we can even get to the best version of ourselves. So for you, you've highlighted that you are so aware of what those core needs are, almost like a checklist. Like, I can go through this each day. Right, have I gone through those such that, okay, I haven't done that, therefore it's likely I'm not going to be that best version of myself, I'm not going to be okay. And the awareness around that is huge, to know who you are first before you can help others.
Oh yeah. Because if we're not okay, if our family's not okay, then let's be really honest, we aren't going to be able to show up and report for duty to serve our communities, our organizations, our teams, the world even, if we're not okay. And that for me is what it means to be anti fragile, living in a very rapidly changing world, it really does mean, how am I taking that leadership piece is, how am I taking care of myself first and foremost? And that's a really important thing. I think some particularly service-based leaders feel that that can almost be selfish, and it's not. It's that restoration and that looking after you is the critical input to your mood, to your energy, to your ability to be able to show up with clarity, with calm, with creativity, with presence, and with that open heart that I was talking about. And so that is so critical. And it's, you, I suppose one thing I would just like to share is just been my experience. In the past, I've had almost like checklists, and actually, I found it. I've found like the lists and the things really off-putting, because the reality is none of us get through all of those things all of the time. And something that I found super helpful, which I've picked up from Brian Johnson, has been this idea that we can be in different contexts or zones, I suppose, best way of describing it. And he talks about three of them. He talks about times when we can have what he would call bubble wrap days. Those days when we can absolutely do all of the things that we would want to do. We're eating well, we get to sleep well, we get to spend time with people that we love and care about, real bubble wrap days where we do all that lovely stuff. But the reality is, most of us don't get those days very often. Talks about where we are most of the time is probably like out in the wild. And sometimes we're paying the price. And those are those days where there's key project deadlines. We might be traveling, with work or abroad, and it's harder to do those routines and those rituals. And so he talks about having base level targets and elite level targets. So you have a range. Um, so if my optimal is to do 30 minutes of intentional exercise every day, well, that's my elite level. And my base level is something super easy that even when I'm paying the price, I can do squats while I'm brushing my teeth, for example. So I find that really useful, because then there's not a punishment with myself for not being able to maybe do all of the things as I might ideally want to. Because otherwise I kind of just get into this nasty kind of cycle with myself. Oh gosh, I'm not, beat myself up. So I think that kindness to ourselves, that compassion to ourselves, and again, I come back to being connected to ourselves and having a good relationship with ourselves is really important.
And going back to that moment where you're lying on the floor in your office, your glass walled office, and staring up at those ceiling tiles, did you take anybody else on the journey with you from that environment, in terms of, you had a huge amount of learning as a result of that event, not in the moment, but subsequently? Did anybody else learn from witnessing your experience?
Mm. I think probably over time, maybe yes. People that were interested to follow my journey and what I had done, and then subsequently wanted to have conversations about, well, actually, how might I find what I'm all about? It's not particularly where I focus my work, but helping leaders to really connect with what matters most to them, and to live in accordance with that absolutely is and continues to be a key part of the work that I do.
And you said it's not particularly where you focus. Where do you focus? What is this focus on why for you?
Mm. So I work with organizations with senior leaders, heads of organizations, those senior leadership teams. And I think it's about helping them to lead well, especially when the way forward is uncertain or that there's a degree of change, and to help them find that energy, clarity, and courage so that they can lead in ways that lifts and supports others, themselves, the culture in ways that matter most. For me, it's about better leadership for a better world.
And it goes back to that combination of the head and the heart. You described it as being a head held high, and was the heart open? I'm just trying to recall
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. How do we keep our heads high and our hearts open, even when it feels hard?
Mm.
Because I think it can feel hard, and it does feel hard for a lot of people right now. There's a lot that we're navigating.
And is it being vulnerable that enables those both to feature?
It's an aspect of it for sure. I think it's a really important aspect of it. And I talk about finding the courage, the bravery to be able to do that because it does take that. I would actively encourage leaders that I work with to share appropriately in the right context if maybe they need some help. Today's a perfect example. Amy, I didn't sleep so well last night, so if I seem a little confused or cognitively slow today, please help me out. And I think as leaders we often forget that by not letting our teams know we're human, we're not perfect, actually there's things that we've got going on and that are challenging us, we deny them the opportunity to help and support us. And when we help and support one another, that feels good. And we're denying them that opportunity. We're denying them that opportunity to feel good. So I think there's absolutely a role that where we can appropriately share with our teams, with those around us, where we might be struggling and how they might be able to help us, that builds that trust, that psychological safety, and the kind of cultures that we really want. So yes.
Yeah, I love that. And you said life isn't perfect. You've said you're not perfect. You've talked about perfection in many different ways, and embracing this imperfection that is all around us and within us is such a huge step to take. And I really feel that what you have brought to today's conversation has just been this calm, this peace, and th- an energy that has really been filled with connection and compassion. And so, thank you for sharing your journey to date, the ongoing, ever evolving journey that will continue. And I'm sure there'll be some who would like to reach out. So, what's the best way for them to do that, please, Rachel?
Best way would be through my website, which is elevar.co.uk.
Love that. And it's in the show notes just in case you didn't get it. So, Rachel, thank you for sharing your evolving focus on why, where you are now, where you have been, and where you intend to go, but more importantly, where you are in the present and what it is that you bring to this absolute space that is now, the what is. How would you like to close out today's episode?
I think it's in my life and in my work, it's about being consciously aware of connecting to our own sense of meaning, of energy, of truth. When we do that, we become more human, more hopeful, and more capable of meeting the challenges of life with grace. And so we are all leaders in some way, shape, or form. And it's about remembering that leading well for good, it's not about power or perfection, but it's about showing up, it's about presence, purpose, and heart.
That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.